load. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council study session for September 10th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone in the room to please mute or turn off your cell phones or other electronic devices. And our first order of business is public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody who wishes to address the Village Council on an item that is not on the agenda, they're welcome to come on up to the microphone or grab a seat here and tell us what's on your mind. Would anybody like to address council on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Our topic for this evening is the residential refuse collection evaluation follow-up. The council has been evaluating the refuse collection program for many years by reviewing service levels and operating costs and examining approaches to reduce the amount of waste that is generated in Winnetka. Following up from the July 9th study session, staff has refined service and pricing options for a modified pay-as-you-throw program and seeks council direction for implementation during the third quarter of 2020. And our Director of Public Works, Steve Saunders, is here to review this.
Thank you and good evening. This is a follow-up to the July 9th study session where we talked about the concept of a pay-as-you-throw program, basically relating price of service to the amount of refuse that's generated. And as President Rintz mentioned, we were asked to return with some rate structures that would illustrate how a pay-as-you-throw program with a curbside collection option could be priced. And just a reminder, some of the benefits of a pay-as-you-throw program are that it provides a financial incentive to reduce the amount of waste that's generated and disposed. It provides options to residents if they want to reduce their service fees, pay a little less for a lower level of service. And it also allows for a curbside collection, which will allow us to reduce our overall operating costs, both to provide the service and also the ancillary items like the number of trucks and the time that's spent on the service. It'll also allow us to, I think, increase our service standards, if you will, because right now with the backdoor service, when we have substitute collectors or new collectors, it's hard for them to play hide and seek with the garbage cans the way that they're sort of located at the resident's option. So when we were looking at rates, there's several factors, and this is just summarizing the material that's in your agenda report. Obviously, the most important is that the rates have to be set to cover the expenses of the service. If an enterprise is going to remain viable, revenues have to cover expenses. The main goal of a pay-as-you-throw program, which is to change behavior and drive down waste generation, means that the rate differential needs to be set such that there's a sufficient price signal to sort of drive the behavior that you want. So in other words, if the larger cans and the smaller cans are priced too closely together, then you're not really going to incent the behavior that's desired. And then probably the most difficult thing and what is illustrated in the various tables that we'll look at this evening is that designing the rates is actually very sensitive to the level of service mix selected by the customer. So in other words, if a huge percentage of customers choose the lowest priced option just based on price, that's going to have a large effect on overall revenue. And it has more of an effect on revenue than it does on cost, because disposal costs and equipment costs and things like that are relatively fixed. So that's why there's so many tables in there. We went back and looked at survey data from our 2018 survey to use as a starting point to try to get an estimate of how many people might be interested in a curbside option, and then design the rate structure around that. So these are examples. They're produced in your handout. But we started off with just the pure number from the survey, which was, we asked the question several different ways, but in general, about 55% of the residents indicated some sort of mild or strong preference for a curbside option. So this example number 1 has 55% of the customers at the curbside. I had to make some assumptions on who was going to choose the smaller container and the larger container. And then 45% continuing with the back door. And this option has the back door twice per week service at about the same level that it is right now. That's about 7% of our customer base pay for that additional twice per week. And you'll see that particular mix generates about $1.95 million a year in revenue, which is very close to, we need about 1.96 to be self-sustaining. So that's very close to what we would need. If you take 10% of the backdoor customers and push them to curbside so that the mix is now 65%, don't do anything with the rate structure, you can see that costs nearly $200,000 in revenue by moving people from that more expensive backdoor to the less expensive curbside. So that example number 2, 65% of customers curbside, and then only 35% of customers at the back door. We looked at a couple of other examples. Number 3 sends a higher price signal to try to push more people to the curbside. And the reason for that is just to see what the impact of that would be. As I mentioned, curbside collection from a collection standpoint is much more efficient. It allows us to design more efficient routes. We can get by with fewer collectors, fewer pieces of equipment. And you'll see that when we do that, we're close on the revenue, about $40,000 under, but that's a higher price. So right now, once per week backdoor is $45 a month. This would push it up to $55 a month, and that gets us close to the revenue that's necessary. A fourth example is sort of a worst case if we assume that 75% of the customers would choose something like a curbside option. You can see that again drives the revenue down. So if we assumed current rates for backdoor service and then added in whatever we would need on the price. Let me go back. If you look at the rates here, for each one of these, the once per week curbside with the smaller container, the 35-gallon container, is priced at $25 a month. That's a relatively market-based price for that level of service for curbside collection. The larger containers priced at $36, and then we varied the backdoor price. When we looked at what would happen if we keep the backdoor price the same as it is now, $45 and $95 for the twice per week, what that would have to do to the once per week curbside with the different container, that increases the monthly service costs by $2 to $3 a month, but it compresses the difference between the backdoor service and the curbside service to the point where it's a $7 a month difference for the back door and the larger curbside container. And then you start to run the risk there of sort of losing the price incentive for people to go to the curb or to generate less refuse. So what we would recommend, just in terms of communicating to the residents if we were to design a fee structure, would be something like this in terms of a range until we can determine exact differences in terms of who selects what level of service. What we really aren't talking about tonight is really all the details of figuring out how to roll out the service in the third quarter. But one of the things that we would do fairly early next year if we would choose to offer a curbside option is do some selective sampling to try to get a representative understanding of what the village might choose in terms of smaller carts or larger carts or backdoor or twice per week backdoor to get enough general data to know how many carts to order when we roll out the service. And then we would have to touch each individual homeowner when it came time to order and deliver the carts to determine their preference to roll out the service. But you can see that this keeps the once per week backdoor fairly close to where it is now. Right now it's a $45 per month charge for that true backdoor service. And then ranges, as you see, to try to keep some reasonable spread so that appropriate price signals can be sent to try to get people to conserve and not generate as much refuse. So the way that we would like to generate the budget coming up is to include the purchase of the containers with an idea of rolling out a modified pay-as-you-throw system with a curbside option in July. I know you all had asked to see sort of what some rate structures might look like to be able to support that, so I wanted to give you some data and some options to discuss as we're preparing our budget. And I'd be glad to answer any questions on the material that's been presented or any lingering questions from July.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, Steve, is open it up for comment first, and then we can deliberate and drag you back into the mix, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions here and comments. So I'd like to just open up the microphone to anybody who'd like. Sure, come on up, Steve.
This would just be, I guess, the sheet. So if you bought...
Name, please, just for the...
Steve Juliuson, sorry, Winneck, Hubbard Woods. So my question is, I think it's a great idea, if you got a container and the guys, over time used it and they broke it, and it's your container, do they replace it, or do you actually replace it yourself? How does that work? And what is the cost of those containers?
So the containers are on average about, depending on the size, maybe $48 to $60. If we break the container, like knock the wheels off or whatever, we'll take it and swap out a container for you. If people want to go from a 35 to a 65, there would be an upcharge for that. But if it's a wear and tear or it's broken, then we would swap that out.
You want to stay up here? We can sing a song. Other question was, I guess the clear preference would be to do it curbside, right? Because it's just more efficient across the board.
Well, I guess, my preference would be to offer a curbside option. I think we would want to offer a backdoor option for those residents that want to continue with that level of service. That's something that's been attractive to people that live here, and it's a sort of something that they really come to appreciate. But I think we'd want to provide a curbside option for those that would maybe want to pay a little less or want to deal with the smaller container or something like that. Right, they have to take the recycling out to do that anyhow.
Anybody else? Come on up.
I think I have to do something to that microphone.
Just pull it down.
Mr. Saunders knows how many times we have emailed because of my situation. I was not at the previous meeting, so sorry, I'm really not a stupid person, but all of this is Japanese to me.
Yeah.
So I just want to tell you about my situation and see how that works out. I have an idea, but I don't know if it's going to work. So we've been in Winnetka since 1983. Unfortunately, I lost my husband to cancer in 2006 when he was 54, so I live by myself. And to me, curbside is out of the question. So I live at the corner of the alley on Rosewood. How should I explain that? So you've got Cherry, and then you've got the alley. So I am at the corner of the alley and Rosewood. And there's a fence and there's a gate, and I measured, and I have size 4.5 shoes. It's 5 feet from the gate to where my small garbage can is. The other thing is I have my garbage, and you can ask, the refuse people. It's twice a month, one small plastic bag when I have my cleaning lady. Other than that, that's it. So to me, having the refuse collected twice a month would be perfect. I have no problem with that. I'm confused because it's $90 per quarter. So you were saying 45? Okay, I need to look at my statements.
You get 6 water
So
bills
it's
a year.
90, so would I save if I were to have twice a month instead of every week?
Well, I don't think Steve is proposing twice a month, but what he's proposing is a smaller can. And if I'm to understand it, is that the alleys qualify as curbside anyway. So
Right.
you would be qualifying for a small can, if we went this way, you'd be qualifying for the smallest can at the lowest rate, which would actually be,
You'd drop $20
yeah, you'd save $20 a month. So it'd be 25, it'd be 50 instead of 90.
I think that I have the smallest size available.
Well, I mean, but now you'd actually be getting charged in a modified way because you have a small can, you wouldn't be getting charged. Because you could have 2 regular garbage cans, but you don't need them, so you don't have them.
Yeah, right. I
Right.
have one, and I don't think there is a smaller
But you're still getting
size.
charged for 2, and that's what we're trying to figure out here.
Okay.
Is you either get one big one or one little one, but if you take a little one, then it's going to be cheaper.
It is one small one.
Right.
So how do I,
Well, right
do
now,
I-
you just keep paying your bill because we haven't changed anything yet, but.
Okay, one last thing. Sorry. So having lived here for so many years, and unfortunately, Mr. Saunders must be so sick and tired of receiving my emails. I have had countless times when my garbage was not picked up. And I used to have the Greek gentleman come, and not once did he forget me. And there's a lovely older gentleman who came to my door and apologized. He still remembers the Greek guy and everything. I forgot his name. So that was something that I was told there are some younger people who have been hired, and I think that they should be trained a little bit better, because there's another thing. I do not work for the village. I do not have to pick up the garbage that flies out of the truck, because that is all over my front lawn. And they really have to be doing their work a little bit better, because that's not right.
Is that the recycling or the garbage?
This is the garbage. No, the recycling, I have to say, I have no problem with them at all. It's really the garbage. Okay, that's it.
Well, thanks. If it makes you feel any better, they've missed me 3 or 4 times this summer, too.
You
so,
too?
Yep. So,
Aha,
so the
Okay.
training process impacts everybody. And I have to, just call up and remind the folks over at Public Works that they missed me. And usually somebody will come the next day and pick it up.
I know.
But don't feel bad. You're not the only one, so.
oh yeah, you're making me feel better.
Oh, good. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
Thanks. Anybody else? Come on up.
Okay, my name is Joan Von Kraut, and like the other lady, I live alone. And in the 25 years that I've lived in Winnetka, I have never had a trash pickup, because I work and I take care of kids and trash is there. At most, I have once a month recycle, maybe once every other month. but let's just say once a month for purposes of this conversation. That means I'm paying $45 a month just to pick up, and it's a small, you know, they have big ones, but I have a small one. And I'm paying $45 a month to pick up one small recycle. The lady next door to me, well, she died 7 years ago, and I'm sure she's paying $90 a month, or nothing, for 7 years, because that house has been empty for 7 years. So I would think it's much more fair to have people pay according to the number of people in the house. Because if you have more people in the house, you have more stuff, okay? If you only have one person in the house, or no people in the house, you don't have any stuff, or very little. So I don't know how it works out with your revenue, because you're right, whatever the expenses are, the revenue has to cover them. But it seems to me it should somehow be based on the number of people who are living in the house. Because if you're not using it, why are you paying for it?
Right. Well, it's an interesting thought, but, you know, the issue that we deal with here is it's just like ambulance service. There's people that live here their whole life and never need the ambulance, but
Right.
they still have to pay for the fire medics who staff the firehouse and who are on call for when they might need it. And, you know, the fact that
That's
they
kind
don't
of
ever use it.
insurance.
But I mean, it's the same, you know, it's still a service provided by the village. So part of what we're trying to figure out here is how to make it more fair. It's going to be somewhat imperfect because perfect fairness would require an inordinate amount of administration to go around and take the census once a year to decide how much we would bill you versus Andy, who has 24 people living in his house.
It only seems like that.
And your two doesn't may or may not generate trash. You know, it's not necessary.
They're not all mine.
Yeah.
They come and go.
But you make a good point, and that's part of what we're struggling with here, and that's why you see this tiered system now. And certainly, you know, I've received quite a few phone calls from people just like you who feel the same way.
Well, I talked to the guy at Public Works, I forget his name. Oh, that's you? What's your name? Oh, yeah, that's you. Yeah, I did talk to you. And you said, well, we can't do that because we have to cover you know, it costs this much money, so every house has to pay this much. But-
We've actually got some families, like, I'm gonna call Liz Kunkel's, you know, she's a large family, and she probably generates less garbage than anybody in the village. Like, her garbage consists of like a little lunch bag once a year. I mean, she's, you know, so it really is about the garbage, you know, that's what we're hauling is garbage.
Yeah, and I've never used the garbage, ever, in
Well,
25 years.
And,
Yeah.
Wow.
and one of the things that we did look at was literally pay as you go, and that you would be charged by the amount of trash you threw out. It's not feasible at this point, but
It's not feasible?
it was one of the things we looked into, but from a technological standpoint, it was just not feasible yet. Maybe it will be in the future, so certainly not.
And also people that are very social, they have, you know, 40 or 50 people over every weekend, catered. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there on,
Well, that's why the volume base that we're talking about here would give people, you know, options for, so you're paying by the amount of volume in terms of the size of your can. So it's moving towards that, quite literally in terms of how much you generate, but,
Well, I think if somebody in the case of 50 people, like a big party, generated a huge amount of trash, I think there would be an extra charge
yeah.
for having all of that trash removed. So the system now would still takes into account if you go beyond your 237-gallon cans or your big recycling. And I think the new system will do the same thing. If you generate more than you're scheduled for, you have to pay for that. But I wish there was a way to do it.
well, the guy that collects ours, anyway, the recycle, the trash guy I know, I always say hi to him, but you talked to him, or he talked to you and told you, I don't have any trash. But the recycle guy, no matter how much somebody puts out there, you know, there's these 2 bins, and maybe they even have a second collection, and then there's stuff on top of the bins, and on the side of the bins, and on the other side of the bins, and he picks it all up. And he never complains. He's so nice. I mean, whatever's there, he takes. I don't know if he writes it down when he gets in his truck, and you know,
That's on the recycling.
charge on the
We
recycle, yeah.
actually make money off the recycling. It's good when there's more recycling going out of the village because the vendor actually pays the village because that's like product that they then recycle. So we actually,
So it behooves the village. It's more cost effective for us if people put as much recyclable material into the recycling bins rather than the trash bins. So,
trash is bad.
which is part of the reason why we want to encourage people to, you can put as much volume of recyclables out of the curb as you want to, and you're not charged by volume, so.
Well, I mean, I don't hear that much because I'm only one
Yeah,
person, but
yeah.
do you also tell people to clean the recycle?
You know what was interesting is the fellow from our recycling contractor was here a couple months ago. And, I told him the challenge, when we first started recycling, you had to wash the bottles and remove the caps. And he told me right out, he said, just throw it in there. It doesn't matter. Because, yeah, I know, which was really remarkable to me.
Well, I was always
that-
told you
I
have to
mean,
clean
if you
it.
got a half, if
That's
you
the way you used to have
if you got a half a carton of milk, it might be good to dump it down the sink before you throw it in there. But the reality of it is it really doesn't matter, because under their new technologies, it all gets cleansed and sorted and everything, and,
Well, I think it does matter because I have 3 kids who live in California, and China used to buy all the California recycle, and now they stopped
right.
because it was so dirty. They stopped buying it, and now they've changed all the recycle rules, and they don't pick up whatever you used to be able to recycle. They only pick up half of that, and you have to clean it, and
It's
it's so dirty they
California,
don't
though.
want it.
But this is what the man told me, and so I've been happy to just crunch up my milk cartons, squeeze the cap back on it, and throw it in the recycling bin, and the same with my Gatorades and everything else, instead of sitting there.
But you put the cap back on there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I always, because if you take the time to clean the bottle, you should put the cap on. Otherwise, when it goes in the dirty recycle truck, it's just going to get dirty again.
right. But I don't even bother cleaning it now, I just put the cap on and throw it in there, and
Oh, you don't bother cleaning it?
he told me I didn't have to.
Oh, he's not right. I'm sorry, but he's not right. You need to clean the recycle. Anyway, so that's my thing, that I think it should be more, I've been told by every recycle person I've ever talked to, you need to clean it. That's very important. First, they said they didn't want the caps, then they said they did want the caps, so I'm not sure about that. But I definitely think it should be by the person, or maybe, I mean, you could have one person, and if they generated 3 big cans of recycle, maybe it shouldn't be by the person, maybe it should be, how much stuff they have.
Right, well, ultimately, that was, we talked about that at a previous meeting, where the technology isn't there yet, but when they come and pick up your can and dump it, with the automatic dumper, that it actually weighs how much trash you have, and then you would get a bill based on that. But the technology isn't there yet to accurately do that, and because we're a small village, the amount of manpower that it would require to do that sort of billing would offset the savings that we could have offered you if we did that now. Now, technology is changing every 15 minutes, and who knows, in a couple, 3 years. Of course, it took us 5 years to get this far, so I can't guarantee anything's going to happen quickly, but, moving to sized cans and paying for different sized cans is a step in that direction.
Could the can itself, when you put it in there, automatically weigh it?
Well, that's what we were looking at, but it can't do that yet.
Well, when it can, it could weigh it, and then when they put it on the truck, it would tell the truck how much it weighed.
Right. That was the idea, but the technology isn't there for that yet. So we'll let the folks in California figure it out.
Well,
In
I
a few
have 2
years, we'll
kids,
look
I
at
might talk to them about it.
it. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Quick question. The list that I have of what can be recycled is maybe about 4 years old. And, they put those popcorn, whatever they call them, and,
Those styrofoam, yeah,
styrofoam.
right.
Right. So that was not recyclable.
Right.
Is it still not?
I don't know, Steve. Are peanuts recyclable?
Anything that is styrofoam.
So we have you can't put the peanuts or the styrofoam in your recycle bin. We do have a drop-off at our village yards for styrofoam, because styrofoam can be recycled, but it's got to be kept separate because the contractor can't handle that through their automated processing facility.
Add one more thing. This might be going down a rabbit hole, I don't think we do that, but
Oh, we're already down there, Steve, so.
is it possible that, when you have this one, go on this, here's one of the other bill, because you're gonna get billed a certain amount, and maybe you never use that.
Well, and the reality was, up until last year, it was all buried in your tax bill.
Right.
So you didn't even know you were paying for it. And, the first step was to pull it out of the tax bill and get it where everybody could look at it, and then start to attack the cost basis, because in the tax bill, if you had a larger tax bill, you were paying more for the same service than if you had a very small tax bill. So all these things, all these moves are incrementally moving towards some sort of true pays. If we end up, and the folks here at the table might decide that they don't want to do that at all, but, the thought process is that we're moving in that direction.
So my question was, is it technologically feasible to do something like have a gun that you can shoot, like every container would have a zebra box, some kind of a scanning code. You can hit that, and it's a little bit more work because each time you get a container, you have to do it. But at least you get a record, and you can take that and it corresponds to the address.
Steve?
I should probably abstain from that.
Yeah, that technology is there. The problem is it's not compatible with our billing system, and the billing system is tied in with all of our financial software, and so the cost of changing and upgrading. But we are going to be getting containers with RFID, radio frequency ID chips, yeah. So we'll have that built into the containers. If the technology gets easier for us to use, we'll be able to move towards an even more, a true pay-as-you-tip, pay-as-you-throw, so. Right, so you have a proximity reader, and so there are some companies that offer that service. The billing structures are a little complicated because there's a base service per month, whether you put anything out or not, and then it's each additional tip is you're billed a certain amount, but we don't have the billing capability to do that.
Well, come on up, Jeff. Oh, Chuck, you wanna?
I'm Chuck Dowding, 968 Elm Street. I'm Chair of the Environmental Commission. First of all, I want to thank you for the progress you've made. I mean, we've been, we, the village, have been working on this for years, and hopefully it's not going to approach decades. And I know Steve has worn out several pencils calculating all the details and whatnot. We've looked at many villages and looked around the country and seen how other progressive towns are coming up with systems to send price signals to people so that they can begin to reduce the amount of waste they produce and produce more recycling. So I really commend you for, digging down on this. I know it's very complicated. I guess I was a little perplexed when the amount was extracted from my tax bill, went to the fee schedule, but I see the wisdom in that now, because that allows us to, of course, have this discussion where we really couldn't have had that before. So I'm really pleased that we now have a system, well, hopefully we'll have a system where there's a price signal and that people have some sort of incentive to do what's right for our planet. And we are generating huge amounts of waste that it's very, very difficult to dispose of this waste. We're running out of places to put it. And we need to do our best, and I think it's when we have systems that allow us to understand the benefits of working hard to produce less waste and more things that can be recycled, I think that can only lead to good things for our planet. So thank you again very much. And I also really like the system because it allows us to experiment. We have the RFID tags, and when this technology comes along, and I'm sure it will eventually, there'll be some bright student at MIT or at Northwestern who'll come up with a way around this problem, and we'll actually be able to maybe go to a system where we don't have to collect it once a month. I mean, once you get the RFID identifier, then perhaps we can address Joni's issue there. And so I think this is beginning this system will pay a lot of dividends for our town and do the right thing for the environment. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Chuck.
And
Come on up,
Chuck
Jeff.
has done a lot, just done a ton over the years, so.
Yeah, and thank you for all your service on this, too.
A little update here, according to the Lakeshore Recycling System, their May 2019 newsletter, relative to plastics, they said plastics should be rinsed clean. And it doesn't make that point relative to the other materials, but it does say plastics should be rinsed clean.
Maybe he was just sucking up to me so he could keep the
Well,
business.
your glass jar, yeah, you, Chris, can throw in your bid. So,
You know?
so there we go.
Just throw it in there, that's what he told me, so.
I think it's a guy washing your car outside your door.
So, it said plastic should be rinsed.
No
clean,
pizza
but
boxes, that
relative
he
to
did
the,
tell me, though, yeah.
Yeah, the other materials, it wasn't a big deal, yeah.
I stand corrected.
There
Go ahead, Jeff.
goes your milk, Chris. Jeffrey Liss, 640 Winnetka Muse, and some of you may have noticed a change of address, that I'm no longer in a single-family residence, so tonight's discussion is of less immediate relevance to me. Before I get to this topic, though, as long as I got everybody in a room, my wife and I have this big pile of batteries that we can no longer dispose of. We'd like to know what is recommended for them. And if there's any money to be saved here, can the village take them again?
Alkaline batteries can be disposed of in the garbage. If they're rechargeable, like lithium ion or things like that, there's resources on this village's website that take you to SWANK, Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, for where those can be
So
recycled.
what's changed that all these AA and AAA batteries can now be dumped in the garbage they couldn't before? Is it just,
Are they not toxic?
what happened? I mean,
So that they can be disposed of in the garbage. They're not prohibited, and there's not really good recycling options for alkaline batteries.
well, what were you doing with the regular batteries when you were
We had
collecting them?
we had a contractor at one point that was recycling
Because
them.
there's lithium ion
But that has gone by the wayside. We don't have that option.
So in other words, stuff that shouldn't have gone in garbage in the first place is now has to go back in the garbage because we can't recycle it.
That's,
Okay? All right, I'll tell my wife that that's the situation. Anyway, back to this. First of all, I'd like to say for the record that my 33 years in Winnetka, we found nothing but really good service from the garbage pickup people, and we're really pleased. And one of the things they do, which you might notice in passing if you're going to curbside, is that when you have a can and an overflow, a little bag, they're quite helpful in just picking it up and tossing that in. I don't know if you're planning on disciplining them or telling them not to do it if it's the curb. And of course, if people put it out in the curb at night, there's more of an animal risk. Anyway, since the topic is the financial aspects of it, I'm really not going to get into the overall things about, convenience, unsightliness, animals, and the impact on older people who have another cage to do. So we won't talk about that. But on the financial thing, I remember one of the council meetings, somebody pointed out the backdoor pickup was sort of unique to Winnetka. And it was also pointed out that's one of the things that made Winnetka special and a nice place to live. And essentially what you are proposing to do is basically to take that away as a generic Winnetka amenity, which you may have reasons for, but you should be aware that that's going to be going to the wayside. On the financial aspects, if you came out straightforward and said, okay, we've had a one-price-fits-all for many years, and now we think that is a bad policy, that we really want to differentiate between uses and there's enough money to make it worth all the effort to do, that's a straightforward reason to doing it, and go ahead and do it. What puzzled me when I read the agenda and the report was I simply did not understand the four justifications for doing it that were given. The first one was a financial incentive to reduce waste. Now, there are two things that hit me. Number one, if you're complaining that people throw into garbage things that should be recycled, and you think that's a lot, okay, then there's an argument. But for me, looking at it, everything I bring in the house that doesn't get eaten either goes into the garbage or goes into recycle. the fact that you have a fee still means I still have to dispose of it. And if it's not going into the garbage, it still has to go out. So I don't see any incentive to reduce the things I'm buying just because it's going to cost me more to get rid of it. This just doesn't make any sense. So I think, except for the first thing, that argument is just platitude. Secondly, we already talked about you get a choice of level of payment. That's your policy decision. But the reduced staff time and equipment needs, now that one kind of puzzled me because you're talking about keeping this thing revenue neutral, I believe. So if you're not spending all that staff time on doing this, then maybe you ought to just reduce the total cost you charge people because you have less to recover since they're not working on this. They're doing something else, and that should come part of the village tax incentive or tax charges. I also questioned, are there any cost savings, really, from this? I just don't know. We're not planning on firing anybody. I don't think there are any plans not to hire somebody you would have hired. So, again, I just don't see the cost difference. And the last thing was reduces injury and potential service difficulties with the backdoor pickup. Are there any data that shows in the last 5 years how many people have been injured between the curb and the back door? If there is that data, that ought to be on the table to see how that compares with something else. Otherwise, again, I consider that essentially a bogus argument. As I say, it leaves you just, if you think the thing is inequitable for one price fits all, and the difference is sufficient, they should take away the general amenity. But it no longer affects me personally, but it's a good Winnetka citizen. I thought I ought to tell you how I reacted when I read that. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
we've been looking at this for several years.
Yes, I know.
And every point you've spoken to, we've had lots of data. And lots of meetings.
Kept me away from here.
Yeah.
They switched on me, so I got here at night.
Yeah, but, so, we don't make decisions sort of by the seat of our pants.
I only know what I read.
Right. So all of those points, though, if anyone is interested, there's oodles of stuff, so.
Tons. Anybody else like to chime in? Okay. Well,
A little clarification. Hi, everybody. Pat Balsamo, longtime resident, longer than you, Jeff.
Now she's pulling rank.
Arm wrestling.
Clarification here. We are looking at these companies to replace what we have now. Is that correct?
No.
Go ahead, Steve, tell us.
This discussion still anticipates that Winnetka will be providing the service with its own forces and its own employees.
That's garbage.
Refuse, that's correct.
Yeah, and refuse, which is recycling and that kind of.
Recycling is already contracted, that's provided by Lakeshore Recycling Systems. But the garbage is collected by
Our
Winnetka
people,
employees
yeah,
and
those great guys,
would
yeah.
continue to be so.
All right. When we were talking about this earlier, we were wondering what the village might do as far as researching composting, which is working out very successfully in nearby villages. And I would like to know what the status of composting is here.
You must have missed that meeting, Pat.
I must have missed it. I could have.
So we currently have 3 vendors that we're partnering with that provide food waste composting. The information's on our website. It's been, there's an article in the current Winnetka report that has all the details on that. It's been sort of a soft rollout over the summer. So we have 3 separate companies that individual residents can contract with directly to provide food waste composting. So that rolled out over the summer.
Thank you. Talking about that wonderful brochure that just came out and featured the first woman president of the Board of Trustees in this village, Gwen Trindle. She's going to be 92 tomorrow. If some of you know her,
Is she okay?
you
I know
might
she
want
was-
to have an email. What?
I heard she had a little incident a while ago. Is she okay?
I saw her last week.
Okay, well, then she's okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. All right, well, what we'll do now is we'll bring the conversation back up here. And what do you guys want to do?
Before-
Fight it out.
Before we talk this through, I was wondering, Steve, if you could run through, just in terms of the program cost, and in terms of what it is that, the cost that we want to recover as a village, if you could just run through that for us in terms of how you arrived at that figure? 100 and.
Sure, the 1.96 million. So that essentially is the estimated annual cost with the savings rolled in from transitioning from the village collecting refuse in the commercial districts to a private hauler doing that. And then we estimate, and again, this is just an estimate, and we won't know until we actually see how many people would opt to go curbside. But we would estimate through attrition that we would be able to reduce the number of refuse collectors by 2, and then reduce the number of trucks accordingly. And we would also have some reduced tipping fees factored in because of the transition of the commercial refuse from village collection to a contract collection.
Okay, so that would include, it does include the new trucks? How is that figured into it?
So
Capital expense.
so the capital expense is annualized. So we carry a depreciation factor in our annual operating budget that
Okay,
allows us to recapitalize on a roughly a 10-year cycle for the large trucks and about a 5 to 6 year cycle on the scooter
okay.
vehicles.
And so we would have to get how many new trucks to do the curbside pickup?
So we've purchased 4 trucks in the last 2 years. There's one more potential purchase that'll be coming in the 5-year plan. And those trucks are suitable for whether we go curbside or remain back door. We don't anticipate, because Winnetka's got a lot of
Yeah, right.
geographic challenges where we
Right.
couldn't go, full, like a brand-new suburb with 35-foot wide
Right,
streets.
No, I remember the
Yeah,
conversation, I
yeah.
just couldn't remember what how we were rolling in the additional equipment. Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
so-
So, and then the tipping fees, and that includes the tipping fees, and labor.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so that's our full expenses. It also includes sort of a transfer payment to the general fund for our portion of the utility billing, because we do that. And a private company would have to pay taxes, and so we recognize that with a payment in lieu of taxes, which is a transfer from the refuse fund back to the general fund for that as well. So it's a fully loaded number, but it anticipates those operating savings, assuming that we get a decent penetration for a curbside selection.
And then remind me, the carts would be provided for free for curbside, or residents pay the initial cost?
Policy decision to be made. We had anticipated the village is going to have to pay for them up front,
Right.
and we had anticipated that would just be rolled in as
So that's
a
included,
capitalized
that's
cost, yes.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you. Does that answer everybody else's questions?
Think you covered.
Okay.
It's just what I was thinking, Penny.
Okay. Thank you. That, any other questions?
Well, have at it, guys. I want to finish this tonight.
One other question is relative to the cost structure, like, for example, with the 25 versus 45, 55, whatever. What percentage of that is the recycling component, the fees, our refuse collection fees that are not directly related to the pickup of that particular can?
Well, there's the recycling contract, they're at somewhere north of $5 per residential house right now, per month.
Per month?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's factored in.
okay.
Yard waste is revenue sustaining, because we would still have stickers
Yeah,
for
right.
the yard waste. Spring cleanup and fall leaf collection services are built into there as well.
Okay, and then, what is our recycling contract cycle? Is that in, you know, given the shifts in the recycling market, is there a potential for any significant change in that? I guess my question is.
There is. That contract comes up in February of '21, but there's some optional extensions. I don't know the interest that Lakeshore would have in extending that contract. It's favorable pricing to us right now, given the market. February of '21.
Of 21, because I guess a certain amount of my question around all this is that we're looking at a lump price, but really what we're talking about right now is the individual residential pickup. So do we want to have this conversation? I mean, well, do we want to consider the price as just that lump price, or do we want to think about it in terms of what the charge for the residential pickup is going to be? Does that make sense?
I think they're helpful data points, but I think we should keep it
Okay.
based on what people are
Okay,
paying.
all right, well, it's helpful to understand
Yeah.
how much of that $25, for example, is,
That is helpful.
yeah, okay.
So what are we gonna do?
Let's do it. So, I'll just get, so we've, and I want to, sometimes you know the work has been done well and thoroughly when the solution appears
It's pretty
surprisingly
obvious.
simple.
Right.
And when I read this, I was like, yeah, you know, it's really straightforward. I think it's understandable. It does accomplish the things that we set out to do, remove garbage from the tax base. That was our original step in this effort, so we're not hiding in taxes what it costs to move garbage. We are encouraging people to be responsible with our planet, and there are things that people can do to reduce their garbage, whether it's increasing their composting, whether it's being more diligent about recycling, or frankly, reducing the amount of packaged things and being smart about that. I'm not the person to give the lecture on that. Liz Kunkel could do that much better than I could. She's an impressive person, so if anyone doubts it, they should talk to her. So it does all those things. You know, I've been probably somewhat insensitive in the past about the value of the backdoor service. I've listened over the course of this. I do understand how important that is for people. This preserves that option in a smart way that doesn't trash our economic picture. So, but at the same time, it gives those of us that have a little bit of fee and tax fatigue the opportunity to send one of our 37 kids to the garbage can down the driveway. And, you know, I'll take that $20 a month and apply it to their $4 million college tuition. It's awesome. So, happy about it. And this is very good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll play devil's advocate on that, Andy.
Big
Not
college
surprised.
tuition
Here we go.
loan or the
Yeah,
garbage?
well, I'm down with that. But, you know, personally, I'd be a beneficiary of this. I have a small driveway, I just take it out, no problem. But I start the whole premise, I'm sort of, when Jeff spoke, he may not think I'm in his camp, but I'm kind of in his camp a little bit. First off, you start with, I'll get back to this, we talked about that 55% of people or whatever would consider curbside, that's great, but what we didn't say was that 95% of the people in the survey were happy with the garbage service in town. We have a unique, there's no other service in this town that probably has that level of satisfaction. Two, if we want to talk about fairness, we've heard a couple of situations here where we're not accomplishing fairness. You could have a grid, you know, a matrix, you know, a yard long by yard wide, to get all the different situations of fairness. My across the street neighbor, he's gone for 6 months a year. There's no garbage. He pays it. We can't price this like water, electric. It is overhead, and we have a service that people like. I'm not sure that, you know, the people in the alleys who will benefit from this by just being in the alleys, or someone like me that has a 15-foot driveway, you know, that we're really going to change our behaviors. I mean, garbage comes in, garbage goes out. You know, now, having said that, the no hide and seek of garbage cans, that absolutely needs to be addressed, in my opinion. I mean, that's when I wasn't aware that even happened, that the guys have to go through the gates behind the house to get the garbage cans or whatever. That's ridiculous. It should be sightlined to curb set from the curb or whatever, in my opinion. The price signal, I mean, frankly, I think we're making an assumption here that if we price the service, let's say at $55 back door, $25, that's a huge price signal to me. And I don't know that that does anything other than just transfer cost from one to the other. Someone that can't do curbside to someone who, can do it or whatever. And we don't know the benefits of that. I think that the composting issue is enormous. I mean, I don't see why we can't have a 65-gallon bin, $35 bin, back door, charge someone lower for the 35-gallon bin, charge them higher for the 65, make sure that the bins are within the sight line of the curb, they're not 300 feet down some long driveway, they have to be, at a reasonable spot. And I feel like we're turning a service here that people really like into something where we're just kind of not sure. And that doesn't even get into the point, of aesthetics or whatever, the risk of, nighttime. There in the survey, a lot of comments on animals and so on and so forth, and the aesthetics of it. And I think, just to me, in certain respects, Winnetka, some of us live here because it's Winnetka, and I think it's a great service. If I were doing pricing based on amount, I would just have the smaller bins, same service, where the guys can see the bins, smaller bins, wherever people want to, if they want to put them on the curb, great. If they want to put them next to the side, their garage, fine, and charge accordingly. I think we're turning something over here that really doesn't, we're kind of trying to fix a problem that's not that big of a problem to me.
Is it the backdoor part that you're disagreeing with, not the different can size?
No, I think the different can size would be fine.
Okay, so it's just the backdoor issue.
Yeah.
And
There's-
it's the difference of the fee difference.
Well,
I think if
Or is
I,
it just
if I,
fundamentally the concept of curbside is?
no, well, I'm not a big curbside guy, but if I composted and got myself down from a 65-gallon to a 35-gallon, and to the point, we have our refuse guy, greatest guy in town, he's gonna pick it up whether it's flowing on the garage, the driveway or not, he's just gonna do it. I mean, that's just part of the service we have, and that, we'd have to think about that, but if I could get down to 35 gallons through composting or other initiatives and save a little money, but I still think the great service is that they come and they pick it up, outside your garage or what have you, and I think the village looks good, and I think it's a service that people appreciate, so.
I think part of the difficulty in trying to figure out what the best mix is a little bit, our goals are not clearly delineated. For example, with the backdoor service, I think part of the problem with backdoor service is that because our employees are so accommodating that people have taking advantage of it, so that, there's extra waste there, so it's beyond the 2-can limit, so, we're generating extra volume that it really isn't being covered in theory. And the weight issue in terms of, putting pressure on the employees, and that is causing injury. So, is that a question of backdoor service, or is that a question of that we've been too lenient, we're not observing our own rules? So, the question is the goal to eventually move everything to curbside? Is that really what we want to accomplish? Or do we really want people to choose the service that's the best for them, for people who have difficulty getting the cans out, whatever? Again, I will probably choose curbside, even though I do all I can to get my volume down, because, I have a long driveway and it's tough in the winter and I don't always get that in time. So, as I've said before, recycling, you can go a couple weeks, and if it's not out, it's not a big deal. Garbage, it is. So I think we need to be careful that we are accomplishing the correct goal for our residents, and that whatever system we choose, that we enforce the rules. Hide and seek is crazy, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be asking our refuse employees to pick up cans that are too big and they're dangerous. I mean, watching them haul sofas and stuff out that is not part of a curbside pickup, an extra pickup, that's not right either. So I think we should separate those issues and talk about them separately in terms of enforcing the rules and what exactly is what is the goal of backdoor pickup. So.
I was born to trash at the back door in 1963. So, I mean, I think that this solution is good in most aspects because it allows people, now I'm like Penny, I'm gonna take my garbage down to the curb if that's an option. But then I'm going to be doing something that I think creates one of the problems that this system is going to make worse, which is the number of days that we're going to have trash containers on the front of our houses. Right now it's Wednesdays. If this is gonna be a Monday, a Tuesday, a Thursday, that's gonna be 2 days out of the week that we're going to have containers sitting on the front for a day or two. So potentially, we are going to have, all days of the week, we're gonna have trash containers sitting down as people bring them up or not, or forget. Not everybody's gonna do it, obviously, but right now, when you look at how people do their recycle bins, it goes down the night before, it stays for the entire day. For me, it does, and then it comes back at night when I get back from work. And I think that's a problem, because I think that is an issue of impacting one of the things that does make Winnetka a special place to live, and in people's minds makes the burden, the financial burden of living here acceptable, is by having a special service that you don't get in every other town. But we're wrestling with that. But I think that this does offer the option of allowing you to either take it down to the curb or to have it picked up at the back. I think for somebody like my mom who's 90, not having to take stuff down to the curb is essential. I think that this right now, we're at $45 a month, and this, I think you say it might bounce up to 55. For people on fixed incomes, who, older folks, that makes a difference. For people who have active incomes, where our median income is whatever it is in Winnetka, maybe $55 a month versus 25 is not a big deal, and they can choose to have their cans picked up in the back, and it's not a financial burden. So anyways, I think the fact is that we're paying that 45 now, so people can continue to do that if they want to continue that. I think that, again, my one, and I wish that there was a way that the CHIPS were able to, that we were able to implement that system of dumping garbage, because when my kids are gone, I generate 1 bag of garbage every 2 weeks, and recycling is almost nothing. I mean, I'm usually never in the house to generate trash. So, I mean, I understand the concept of paying for a service that I'm not using that much, and gee, wouldn't it be great if I could only have to pay for every time I tip. But I understand also that it's like the fire department.
So Jack, why not have back door with a smaller can for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I use a 37-gallon can now that's got 1 bag, maybe 2 in it.
Right.
When they come once a week.
So there could be a price difference between something next door using the 65-gallon and you using the 35-gallon.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it was possible.
Now you don't have the aesthetic mess and so on and so forth.
And I'm assuming that people would be able to make that choice about your backdoor pickup. Either you use the small can or the large can.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, wait, no, because the guys have to lift it. Yeah.
Back door would still be 237 cans, because we can't lift the 65.
Right.
No, right, okay, so
right.
I solved my problem by having 2 37-gallon cans.
So you could have, you're okay, but someone could have one if they're not generating that much trash. If they compost more, they reduce, they have incentive to get down to 1 35-gallon bin. And there could be a price difference for that.
Yeah, I think, is that something, Steve, they could do, is they could say, if you have 2 cans and 2 small cans in the back versus 1, or is that not doable?
I suppose it would be doable. It's just an extra
It's not what we asked.
billing, yeah, it's an extra billing challenge to communicate what people are paying for and making sure that the drivers have the route sheet, so that if somebody's paying for one can and they put out two, that they get tagged. That would be the challenge with it, so.
And the reason why we couldn't use the village issues cans is because,
From the back door,
yeah,
the 65-gallon cans at the back door, we would have to wheel from the back door out to the street and then walk back up to the house and bring it back, because we can't lift the 65-gallon.
generally,
You
excuse,
can't lift- you
Penny,
can't lift the
excuse me a
35s
second.
either.
No, the point is that, you know, what I've observed, and it's weird the things I pay attention to around town, but
That's what people
what I see the guys doing, at least in my neck of the woods, everywhere, is they never actually move the cans at all.
Right.
What they do is they drive the scooter up to the fence, in my case,
They got the bags.
and they pick the bags out of the thing and they toss it into the scooter hopper. And that's probably what they do at your place too. They don't touch the can. They just reach into the can, throw the bags, throw the bags, throw the bags. And then my wife runs out and throws another bag, and
Yeah,
then they're done. And then
small can, that's doable. The 65 can.
reaching down in those things would be tough, yeah.
And then some people put everything into a bag, some people don't.
Right.
And so there's material in the bottom of a can. The only way to get it out of the can is to pick the can up and dump it, so.
The 35 is tougher too.
Those big plastic rollers, we can't have our guys
Well,
pick them.
No,
No,
but the
no.
35, I don't know what the
No way.
35,
Yeah.
the 35-gallon refuse container looks like. The one that would be for curbside.
It's like our standard recycling container, just smaller.
So under these proposals or these concepts, the back door, I don't have to get rid of the brand-new metal cans I just bought this spring, right? I get to keep
No,
those.
the only thing that we would contemplate being different about back door is potentially top of driveway pickup. That it has to be visible from the street on pickup day to pick up,
Good.
to avoid the hide and seek. But individuals could use their same two 37-gallon cans for the back door pickup.
I guess the question I'm asking is that what would happen if everybody had the 35-gallon? You could either have the big one or the little one, but if everybody had, even if you had it for back door pickup.
You need them at the curb. So, and, you know, we've had this discussion, so.
I don't remember, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
don't remember the little one.
I mean, if we just do status quo, we're not actually making any progress towards garbage reduction or the tipping, billing. We can't do any of those things. It all depends on the ability to have these cans that trucks can tip, that have the RFID tags. And that's what we asked Steve and everybody to do, right? We didn't ask them to just tell us what the current system looks like. which
No,
is
that's
kind
not my
of
question.
what
That wasn't.
we would have to do. I'm not, I know that's, I'm not
Yeah.
debating you, I'm
Yeah,
talking
okay,
about
okay, all
the
right.
can. So, but that's essentially, you know, the choice. And I thought we already kind of went down this road, so I'm a little scratching what is left of my hair, wondering, you know, we give people the choice to keep backdoor if they want it.
Right.
Otherwise, if we want to try to be responsible and work towards a future where we are making a real difference in our ability to reduce garbage, this is where we need to go. This is how you future ready. And I'm not debating you. I'm making a different point, totally unrelated.
Okay,
Just so you know, because I
Yeah,
feel
good,
like
thank
you want
you,
to
I
respond.
appreciate
and
that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I know you're not saying that.
No, okay.
So, you know, and I understand all the sensitivity with the, look, but the point is, if you just don't like seeing my garbage at the curb, just vote no, fine, I get it, but don't delude yourself. I mean, and Bob, I guess I'm really talking to you. That means we are doing absolutely nothing to reduce and to prepare for what is coming with our landfills filling up. When is our Swank landfill gonna be full? It's like,
2033 or something like
Right.
that, yeah.
and China's not taking our garbage. I mean, so this isn't, like, I get 95% of people are happy, 95% of people are happy with leaded gas, right? And, you know, and I'm sensitive to the fact that this backdoor service is important, but what I'm really scratching my head about is the $45 for backdoor service is exactly the status quo.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're creating a system that says, hey, we respect what you've always liked, and maybe you're not even gonna pay more for it, which is a very Winnetka thing to do of us. But we're creating a system, and I would be willing to bet money that in a span of 5 years, if we do this, everybody's gonna be at the curb, or close to everybody. There's gonna be a small number at the back door, and I think that's gonna be a really, really good thing. I think that's what we need to do. This isn't about what we like, or, I mean, with all due respect, the whole, you know, Winnetka special thing doesn't move anything for me. We're only as special as,
it moves it for somebody.
no, let me finish the thought. We're only as special as our actions. There's nothing inherently special about living in a village if we're not being responsible.
Well, there is something special.
So there is something special about a village that takes this stuff seriously and is doing what it can to reduce what it's putting into landfills.
You may be overstating the impact of going to the curb, of the people that are in the alleys that are gonna be curbside.
Yeah.
My 15-foot driveway moving to the curb, that's probably not going to impact my use of garbage. What's gonna impact my
No,
use, which I
I
haven't done
get
yet.
that. It
No,
may
no.
not impact your use.
Okay.
It's gonna make it possible, though, for us to have the tipping. This is all part of, you know, this is what we've been doing for the last
Well, we're
several
not,
years.
we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Well, if we don't do this, we're nowhere, just to be clear.
No.
I mean, that's, if we don't have curbside as an option, right? And it would only
But
make.
again, you're kind of, to Penny's point, you're kind of mixing the objectives. If there's an objective to reduce garbage consumption, creation,
Right.
you know, what, I'll speak for myself, and I'll probably speak for you too. You need to compost,
Right.
and that's how you're gonna reduce it.
That's a
And you
totally
need-
different issue, though.
Well, but
Because
that's
we
a
need the
huge part of
cans
it.
with RFID.
Moving me, incentivizing me, because all of a sudden now I'm gonna pay $25 to move my can 15 feet out, isn't going to move the needle on my garbage creation.
I get that, and
What's
I'm
gonna
not
move
debating
it
that.
is, what's gonna move it is so you're looking, you wanna do this so that 5 years from now, when we have the technology to do
I'll tell you, it's
tipping-
not just the 5-year. Because we've had this discussion, I'm a little frustrated with the need to repeat it, to be honest with you.
Well, there may not have been
So,
agreement on it.
no, I think there was. We saw a video of what it takes. There's a bunch of reasons why the curbside makes sense. And so there is the future ready, you know, so we have the ability to have RFID. The technology does exist. It just doesn't integrate with our billing system. That's gonna change shortly. That's just the nature of update. I bet our next financial system update, that is gone as a barrier. Okay, so that's one thing. Then, frankly, the most compelling thing, and I haven't made a huge deal out of it, but it is, I think, Ann actually did such a good job with it, I didn't need to. It's the impact on our workers. And anyone who's ever actually done physical labor understands what this does to the human body day in, day out. And I get that we've been doing it forever, right? But this has a huge impact on our labor costs, it has a huge impact on our injuries. This is what, I mean, so, you know, I'm not gonna restate all that, but that's what compels me, right? I mean, that's, if you see the difference between a guy having to go play hide and seek with the garbage cans, or even let's say the garbage can is visible, to go pull all the garbage bags out, and by the way, it is not possible to be heaving a 35-gallon wheeler over your head. That's not happening. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. It is the status quo. They're gonna be doing all of that, and it is ridiculous, right?
So your view is that this is just a step, a transition step to full curbside, pay as you throw.
I think the majority of
Collection.
residents in
That's-
a short period of time will be there, yeah.
And
And if you
that's-
don't like the
and
garbage at
that's
the
the
curb, you won't
message.
like that.
So we did the survey. That wasn't stated as being our objective. That certainly wasn't, didn't come through in the survey results, is what people wanted. You're just sort of saying that is.
Sometimes we
That's
have
the
to
goal.
act because we have a
And-
responsibility
and
to
I
act.
agree with that, and I think that if we incentivize people to create less garbage, if there's a way to do it under the existing system, under the existing service, where smaller cans have a price differential, you have 2 versus 1 or what have you, and people We do a good job on the composting initiative. You know, I mean, I had a friend of my daughter's who's like Liz, she came in from California, she says, I compost everything, I have one little thing, that's something we're gonna try. I mean,
Yeah, but they don't have
but
backdoor
to
pickup
upset,
either.
but to say, you know, $25 versus $45, and then the elderly person who lives on DeWint with a long driveway or whatever, she can't do it, you're gonna, you know, I don't see the fairness on that. I don't see that we are accomplishing fairness. I'm not convinced you're gonna reduce your garbage that much. If it's just a step.
What about the impact on a worker? You saw
Well,
what it takes.
I know.
Well, but that's not, a lot of that's the hide and seek thing too.
And,
No, it's not. It's physically picking up garbage bags all day long.
you know,
and-
I think that there are ways that we can address that problem. I mean, I think it's really a different problem than the issue of where it is. Where we go in the summer, everybody's required, you have to put your trash into trash bags. You know, you buy the trash bag and you put it in there, and they're not heavy to pick up. I mean, you know, that takes care of that particular issue.
It doesn't take care of it at all.
What do you mean?
Look, I get the sense, you guys haven't ever actually
Well,
done this. I
yeah.
have. Okay, so you can get
I
some
have. I
bags
mean, I
that are
carry it out.
insanely heavy.
Right.
And if you spend all day long doing that, you
Right.
know, yeah, you're gonna go to your house and you're gonna have nice light fluffy bags, but you're gonna go to like someone else's house
No,
and it's gonna
Andy,
be full of
you
like
know what,
crazy stuff.
hang on, let's take it down a notch, okay? I do carry it, I do know, I mean, believe me, I have to carry it a long way to get it out to the curb, so I get that. So the question is, if we're talking about volume, if it's volume we want to reduce, that even with backdoor pickup, you know, should there be a difference between 1 can and 2 can? And that was why I was asking about if we give everybody the village 35, you know, at least a 35-gallon container for your back door, which is the same as what you would have right now.
You can't
anyway.
use the 35 at back door.
No, I
That's
think
the
that- I don't
problem.
think
What?
Penny's
Because
saying-
Because you can't reach down into them.
Okay, it's too narrow. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I couldn't tell from the
Yeah, yeah.
picture.
No.
So you can't reach down. Okay,
No,
so that
it's-
answers that, because I was gonna say,
But they're
if
made to
everybody
be,
has a
they're made to
chipped
be,
can.
they're made to be automated tipped.
Okay, all
That's,
right.
that's
That's
the
what we're talking
design.
about, it's automation.
Right.
That's-
Yeah, that's-
you know,
Right.
And if I'm not being clear enough, that's
Right,
my
but,
fault.
but the issue is that, you know, we need to move to this gradually. And my suggestion would be that, for starters, that we have something where, you know, people who are not able, you know, it's not feasible, it's not logical, whatever.
Right.
They don't want to have curbside. Let's take an interim. Let's go with something that will not be seen as onerous to people who
I think
find it
that's
hard.
what the- I think that's
So-
what
And that's what the
Right.
proposal is.
Right.
That's what this is, Penny. It's
Right.
like,
No, I
Right.
agree, I agree. So, but what I'm saying, I'm just trying to summarize, is that we're not making any final decisions one way or another at this point in time. I think.
well, to a certain degree, we are, because once this goes into the budget, Steve's going to be running out buying cans.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I agree, I support this.
Yeah.
But relative to our price indicators, I think that we shouldn't.
Oh, the amount is not, well, we won't know the amount until we get this tape.
Right.
Yeah, right, but I mean, I'm just saying, as a policy matter, that has, you know, how we go forward with this. I mean, I don't think anybody's arguing about the overall general plan.
I think Bob is. I mean,
Well,
And-
I think there should be a price differential. I just think that we could be creating a mess in our town. Again, if the objective is to go full curbside.
Well, I don't know if that is the
Well,
objective.
But I mean, that's ultimately where you're
I'm saying
saying.
I think that's where
we-
this goes, yeah.
That's where we're going.
I think from attrition, that's where we'll end up.
Okay.
But
So
I,
you're gonna be halfway.
We're not forcing. it
well,
on
yeah,
anybody.
because as long as guys like you and me are around, it's
Well,
going to
no,
be
I'm gonna
this
move
half
mine
and
out.
half.
I'm gonna move mine out.
Well, guys like me who
Yeah,
are still
I mean,
around,
I know, because
it's
I'm
gonna stay at the back
15
door.
feet, you know,
But
so-
I think our policy direction will depend, I mean, you know, in terms of the pricing indicators, you know, whether, how we structure it is gonna be
Yeah,
something
I don't
of a
think it
signal.
should be a huge gap between the two.
Well, it's like $7.
Well,
Well,
but you know what, we're
No,
sending
I
a
think
signal if
22
we
to
say,
45.
you know, a lot of it has to do with how
Pretty big.
we structure it and.
but we're all
and-
paying 45 now.
Right, exactly.
So there has to be an acceptance that that's what the charge is
Right.
today.
Yep.
45, you
Right.
pay 45, you pay 45, I pay 45, you pay 45. everybody pays 45.
I don't know, based on
And,
the way the recycling guy was, maybe you're not really paying for it.
well,
You're getting your plastics washed by.
So the question is, where do we want to charge,
do we want to be equitable?
well, do we want to, if you choose to keep your current service, are you going to have to pay more? Or are we offering a cost savings for
Well,
people who are
what
going
Steve was
curbside?
proposing here was that the backdoor service, and that was the edict, as I remember, Bob stated this, no, actually, I think John did, as Steve was walking out the door last time. The only way we're gonna have a conversation about this is if the backdoor service stays the same, price-wise.
Yeah.
And I think Steve has achieved that threshold by saying, okay, if you keep your backdoor service, you're gonna just keep paying what you're paying. If you wanna take a smaller can and wheel it out, you're gonna pay less, which to me, I don't like it because I walk through Glencoe every morning on my normal exercise route, and I see on garbage day that there's now 2 cans out there on the curb. And if I go up and run up to Foodstuffs late in the afternoon to grab something for dinner, at 4:30 or 5 in the evening, as I'm driving through Glencoe, there's still a bunch of cans sitting out on the street, and it looks like, it looks horrible. I don't like it, but I also have an understanding that people of a different generation are more accepting of that, and it might be something that is part of the evolution of how the community, you know, what becomes of the community. Some of us older folks, God, I can't believe I'm even saying that, but, you know, I mean, I love my backdoor pickup. I like not having garbage cans. It bugged me when we started recycling and putting the cans out, because it just looks, it doesn't look like Winnetka, to your point. And Bob, I'm so happy that you're taking a qualitative approach to this, which is cool.
Well,
So,
But what do we do? So this is all based on projections and, you know, we look at. I don't
This
know
is the
which-
middle ground.
I don't know which scenario we're looking at.
Yeah,
here,
right.
The
but
last
That's-
one.
That's what I'm asking
The
about.
last.
on page, I'm
Well,
sorry, page
but,
8.
so,
On page 8.
$8 for the monthly cost.
Wait, where are you, Jack?
it's.
Page 8.
it's here, but what I'm
it's
saying is you
after
still
the
have a
four.
matrix, and the question is, how do you sway your balance?
So I can see what's gonna probably happen is, you know, which would be telling in of itself, if more people than we think, so if I go to the curb and we run short of revenue, what are we gonna do? We're gonna raise
The garbage rates.
Then there's gonna be
garbage
more of
rates.
a penalty, there's gonna be more of a penalty for staying
So
backdoor.
You're gonna raise the rates for the.
You're gonna penalize your
for the
backdoor people,
backdoor,
right?
And they're then gonna move, and so you're gonna get less revenue, so you're gonna,
It's costing us less. I mean, we've had the data. It costs us way less if we automate. I mean, this is what every private company in America knows, and we should not act differently.
personally, I
But-
think that I like the, actually, I like the last page of tonight's presentation on page 6. If we were gonna do this kind of spread feels better to me than something more than that.
But I think we need to gather the data,
Yeah.
right? So we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to get the subscriptions from each household, and then we'll come back with the data to do the final rate making. And you'll have that ability to say, okay, what's the differential based upon the
Six.
data from the residents? This
Well,
was on the
6 is
PowerPoint.
like the locked in as opposed to the range.
Yeah, this was the additional example in the PowerPoint.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, you did it.
oh, are you on the PowerPoint?
It's on the
Okay.
PowerPoint,
But-
you have it over there if you want to take it with you.
Page 6 keeps us at 45 for your current service.
Page 6 of the,
No changes for people who want to leave it that way.
Correct,
But that's all based on Steve's
65%.
estimates, and until we have,
You won't know. I'm not opposed
No,
to
but in
that
terms of
spread either.
policy,
If it
we
works.
just say, this is the way we want to go, we like the 65.
But if it doesn't work, it doesn't, you know.
No, I know, but I'm saying in terms of they got, to your point of let's do it, let's get something done. Let's tell them what we want.
Just if I can, just one point to keep in mind so the revenue was based on needing 5 people for collection. There is a point of curbside penetration where that number is going to drop. I don't know what that point is. It's something probably 75 to 80%, we go from 5 people for collection, perhaps down to 4. And so then the revenue drops accordingly. So it's not guaranteed that if we get a rush to curbside, that it's going to throw our expense revenue balance out of whack, because we'll have potentially an opportunity to become even more efficient and reduce on the expense side as well.
And maybe not buy the 5th truck and not have to incur that depreciation. And I mean, there's a lot of what-ifs. The other thing we could do is have a lot, based on this page 6 thing, is have a lottery for 2,600 spots of curbside. Right? Just have a lottery. The first 2,600 people we pull out of the hat get curbside, the other ones are stuck with back door. I mean, the point is that we don't know what that number's gonna be. It's interesting, Bob, is I do talk to younger residents in the town, and when I even mention this, they look at me like I have 2 heads, because it's like, what do you mean?
Right, but.
Well, that's because they're young.
Well, right,
Let me
and
tell
they
ya,
haven't,
somehow things
they
have
haven't
gotten
grown
different
into
over the last
enjoying
10 years.
the backdoor
It's not-
service.
For me, it's not an enjoyment. For me, it's literally, it's a physical issue in the winter. And so, it just depends. I mean, I used to have
Well-
4 young kids home who could take stuff out.
And that's part of it.
Yeah, literally, our physical abilities change, and so.
The thing is, Chris, I think I know on our street, for instance, we have a mix of younger, older, et cetera, et cetera. And, just as an example, on the recycling, we have people putting the recycling out 2 days in advance, and, they bring it in 2 days later and whatever, and the garbage, I suspect it'll be the same thing. And we can always say, well, old Winnetka, blah, 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 we don't need that, but, why not get rid of the sidewalk plowing? You could save a ton of money. A lot of villages don't do that. Winnetka does that. There's certain elements of this town that a certain part of the population
They expect.
really has enjoyed and expects it, and yes,
Well,
times change.
and
but-
It is a touch point. I agree with you
No.
totally, Bob.
So-
For me, in a perfect world, we'd leave it alone, but I also, Andy is my conscience. No,
In general, but on.
no, but Andy is my conscience to the future here, and,
You're me
between him,
15 years ago.
and then every time I go out to lunch with Liz, she beats me up on this, and so, I'm starting to get a social conscience relative to garbage, and that's part of it too, it isn't just the Winnetka experience, there's a social responsibility issue
right,
here
yeah.
that haunts me from the other side.
Right.
But the composting argument.
That's huge.
Is very powerful to me.
Well,
Very
it's really
powerful.
important.
I'm not sure that we'll see a big difference in garbage creation by what we're talking about here. It's fine, people can pay less, what have you, save on labor costs, I appreciate that, but I think that, the composting goes,
Actually,
long,
you know
long
what?
way.
The composting will, because that actually is a lot of the wet, heavy garbage, I think it will affect the tipping fees. And relative to landfills, the methane that's produced by food waste is huge. So, I think from a sustainability standpoint, that's a really big thing, but also relative to, I think the impact will be greater, I think, on our tipping fees and pickup.
from the composting.
If everybody starts doing it, yeah, if it really becomes, but I think that's something we gotta push on.
So Bob, do you like this rate structure better? Is that what, or was it?
Well, I don't think, I have an aversion to a very large differential between the current fee, which I don't think should change. I don't think we should be changing the price.
Of the
that are
back door.
Receiving the service today. And I don't think the low end should be so low that
You're forcing.
you're kind of, you're not forcing someone to do it, but you're creating a signal that is,
You're killing my college fund, Bob.
well,
Except that, I think though, but by raising the curbside rates a little bit, like page 6 does, that allows you to leave the back door at 45, the current rate.
Right.
Which I think that allows people to keep
Hopefully.
that.
It's a place to start.
No, I
It's a
know,
place
but
to
I'm
start.
saying, I get that. And again, some of us have worked hard jobs even though we live here. We've done physical things. So we understand the argument about making things less hard on public works.
Yeah.
And when it becomes, so I I don't like the idea of more cans on the street. I think that it does make a difference. And we're 13% of the village budget. And that's what we're arguing about, a very small part of people's tax bills. And so optics and aesthetics are actually very important for what we do in terms of making people feel that this is a special place. It's the most expensive place to live, I think, in the state, if not the country, in terms of real estate taxes. So it does matter how it looks and how it runs and how it appears. So to me, that's always been an issue, and it hasn't been just because I can put the trash out. I take my recycling out every week, and so I could do my trash the same way. I don't care about that. But in terms of what makes Winnetka special, I really do care about that, because it really does matter. Because the people who live here make a choice to live in a place that's really expensive to live. And they do it for reasons not because, well, maybe because it's just next to the lake. Maybe it's because it's...
Maybe it's because we've got people that volunteer that are, you know, active in the community, and people like Liz. That's what's true, frankly.
Now
out
I'm
there.
gonna, I'm gonna put on,
Is it possible to find people if they don't bring their thing back to the house?
anything's possible, I guess, but it's just a matter of, you know,
You have to have it
what I
outside
do
fence.
is I know who the elderly residents in my neighborhood are, and when I'm out walking the dog, if I see their recycling can is still out there at 8 o'clock at night when I'm walking the dog, I just wheel it up to the garage for them. I mean, that's just being a good neighbor, right? And it's just like when I got the snow blower out, if I'm on a roll, I just go down the block and blow out the people that I know can't do it. But that's the right thing to do, right? But that's what it means to be a Winnetka resident and a good neighbor. But now I'm gonna put my Ann Wedner hat on, because I promised her I would, even though I heard what she said, and again, it's a conscience thing. You know, yeah, we have this serene environment and, you know, the highest real estate taxes, and we have this expectation of this genteel lifestyle where garbage cans aren't littering our street. And yet we're doing it on the back of $20 an hour workers, who no, but wait a minute,
That's not a fair argument.
well, but it is, because
That's not a correct argument.
because they're low paid and the risk is high. I worked as a carpenter for 8 years, and I swung a hammer. I was on a decking crew. I swung a 20-ounce framing hammer 8 hours a day, and at 25 years old, my elbows were already starting to hurt. Now today, you see carpenters that are in their 40s and 50s doing the same work because they simply have a nail gun. And technology has allowed those people to work a lot longer and support their families a lot longer and work in a much more humane environment and actually extend their careers for a much longer time than hitting 35 or 40 years old and have your body falling apart and not having anything to lay back on. Now, that was a carpenter, okay, so maybe he could go do trim work or he could do handyman stuff. But what does a trash collector fall back to when his body gives out? And I'm just saying, I'm arguing this for Ann, but there is a compassion piece here that potentially some of the experience that we all enjoy has been done so because we've been able to find inexpensive labor who is willing to disregard their physical health to earn a paycheck and take care of their family. That's the other side of the equation. I
would argue.
No, Steve, it's up here now.
I would argue that we can do a better job of being sure that if we do continue to have backdoor pickup, that we do a better job for our employees. I don't think that we work very hard as a village to be sure that backdoor pickup is done properly. And so I think we could go ahead and work towards that. I'm not saying that's in defense of backdoor pickup, but if we are going to have backdoor pickup, that's our responsibility to do that. So I agree with you in that respect.
And I was channeling Ann Wedner.
Yeah, no, but I think we
because-
need to do, regardless, I think we need to do a better job, period.
Huh? Thanks. Well, you know, I mean, I get it.
His hair
I
is getting
mean,
longer as we speak. So, but no, I mean, no matter what, I think we need to do a better job of that. So I think that's a separate task.
should have seen it in
There's a
'69.
couple other policy issues.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to add,
Sure, just chime in, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just want to say two things regarding the, first of all, those gentlemen who pick up our garbage, they usually get something, for Christmas. So that's, the other thing that I wanted to say is that when we first moved here in 1983, they were not the young people picking up the garbage, and they never complained. However, the new residents seem to not really care whether something should go in the recyclable or in the garbage. And I see my neighbors with 3 cans. I mean, what can you possibly be throwing in the garbage? Why don't you put something in the disposer? Or why don't you do the composting? The new residents have a different concept of respecting what the village is about. And I think that if there is a way to sort of wake them up and say, if something should go in the recyclable, put it in the recyclable. And if there's something that can go in the disposer, put it in the disposer. But they should, I mean, there should not be 3 cans of garbage every single week. I see it right in front of me, my neighbors.
This, this woman behind you is going to come over and hug you pretty soon. So, well, where we at, guys? I mean, we got to close this up.
Let me just, this is not a fight to the death to me at all. I mean, I'm all about reducing cost if we can, particularly reducing cost for me if I can. And this is one that I could reduce my cost. But I do share Jack's views on this, that I think that we are ultimately, and Andy, if it ends up that we're at curbside and that's where we are, boom, 5 years from now, that's where we are. But I think in the interim here, we're opening up a whole can of worms on this in a way that I don't really think we need to, because I think we could accomplish this in some way, Steve, by having, 2 cans, 1 can, the backdoor pickup, encouraging composting and so on and so forth to reduce, sending price signals that way to reduce the cost of garbage. But if this is a transition just to curbside, then this is the first step on that. And, it's not, I'm a go-along guy on it, I guess.
So what's the use of having had the survey? 90% of people were not for curbside, so why have the survey?
Well,
It didn't say that.
it said 95% people were happy with the garbage pickup. 55% were willing to go to curbside.
Well, it had an interest.
Yeah, had an interest in it, so it's just, everybody loves our garbage men.
Yeah, right,
Wait,
right,
what's
right.
that?
You're mixing 2 different sets of stuff.
Yeah.
We won't,
That's
we don't
right.
really know.
So Penny, where you at on this? I mean, can you live with this, or?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I just want to make sure that we don't, well, anyway, yeah, we're fine. I support
Jack,
transition.
Yeah, I can
can you live with it? Okay, Andy, I know you can. Ann, I know she could live with it. John could not live with it. And,
What was
Well, I
his-
think John would,
With the 45, if that might.
I think he would live with it. I think he'd probably be interested in the details. I think Devil's in the details, how we
I'm sorry, where would he come down? He
buy
would,
for this.
you wanted to go completely?
he's more in Bob's camp and
Oh,
my
okay.
camp on the aesthetic component.
Oh, I agree, I mean, that's an issue, I mean, we're gonna have to,
And that's gonna be
Figure
the
it out.
problem. If this thing does migrate to a more of a curbside setup, that's gonna be the toughest part, is just, educating our community on how to be good neighbors with respect to their trash cans and getting them off the curb so that we can enjoy the community that we bought into with the same aesthetics that we have always expected here. And I couldn't agree with you more. I hate going through Glencoe on garbage day. I hate it.
Island Park Center?
You know,
It's-
and I don't want to get too far ahead in the implementation, but there may be a relatively simple solution on that, which is if you've got people that have elected curbside and they leave their cans sitting there for days, you remove that option from them if they get a certain number of strikes. You
No,
have to penalize them.
there's
to take it away.
there's the penalty concept.
Right, and it's, you know, there's a responsibility that goes with electing curbside and the reduced rate, and that's yelling at your kids to go get the cans and bring them up.
Right.
Or however it is you get them up there, but I think that, I'm not, like, I think Winnetka is special, but I think it's special because we have these discussions and because we are thoughtful about these things. You know, I apologize, I am insensitive about it's, you know, it looks prettier. It always reminds me, I had this guy, this plumber, and he was in my basement as sewage was pouring out of my black water pipe everywhere. And he's like, you know what, your stuff smells just as bad as it does. And that stuck with me, you know, and I haven't been able to let it go. So I apologize if sometimes I seem unsympathetic to that, but I think this is a good plan.
No, and I think the sensibility's there, so,
Well, I'd say
Steve?
it's funny that Andy is taking this, you know, Winnetka's not a special place, not that he really said that, and just went in with his family, made Winnetka a special place. So I think that's very funny that he takes that position, but he really doesn't.
Well, it's all about the community.
Okay. So Steve, you got your policy direction. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of devil in the details.
Right.
It pains me to think that we're gonna have to talk about this again, but
Every year.
we're gonna have to talk about it again. Just make sure the one thing I would like to examine, and I think this, I know what you guys, staff, really is supportive of the curbside. And I understand the reasons why, because you're striving for efficiency and you're striving to give residents the best bang for their dollar. However, I also think you're hearing that there's a concern about some of the aesthetics. And I would like to find out if there is a potential for a container, a backdoor container that would facilitate the same sort of activities that they currently have, in case we find out from the community that it really is 95% of the people really like the backdoor service. So at least we'll have something that would allow us to fall back to that or still accommodate that need, rather than just forcing people forward.
And I want to reiterate, it's not just aesthetics. I mean, for some people, it's also an issue of it's just not practical for everybody.
Of course.
Well, and it would be
And so it's more than aesthetics. It's also in terms of being thoughtful about what our residents need, so.
Great. Okay, well, you got your direction, and we'll be talking about it again.
We can just not have that.
Thank you, everybody. We're moving forward on our agenda. Closed session. May I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss the purchase or lease of real property by the village and review of closed session minutes pursuant to sections 2C5 and 2C21 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yep.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Craig?
Yes.
The council meeting will adjourn immediately after the closed session. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out. And see, it wasn't that painful. You should come out more often.